What's up guys, YST here and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today I'm going to be talking about my 10 most regretted 6-star champions on my account, ones that I personally never use anymore or don't see myself using anymore because of champions that I've maybe recently pulled or just kind of got diluted over time since I started this game all of those years ago. But in the comment section below, you guys let me know, which champion is your 6-star regret? What's the one that maybe you loved it at one point and now it's like, why are you even on my account anymore? It's not to say that these champions are complete trash for everybody in this game, nothing like that. It's just for me, personally on my account, I can't remember the last time that I even touched these champions, literally. So we're going to start off with the epics, spice it up a little bit, and let's go into Juliana. Now, many people that's been around the channel for a very long time, or even just been playing this game for a long time, knows that at one point, she was the most sought after champion, period, for the clan boss. She was just up there. But obviously at that time, we didn't know what was the crazy 100 million teams or like speed tuning, anything like that. She was just pumping out the best damage for like the nightmare clan boss at the time. And basically she attacks one enemy 2 times. Each critical hit fills this champion's turn meter by 10%. Okay, like it's alright. And then on lethal partner, places a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion, then attacks one enemy 2 times. Places a 5% poison debuff on the target for 3 turns if this attack is critical. Will ignore 50% of the target's defense when Romero is on the same team. Frozen Banshee does poisons 10 times better than she does, pretty much. Like, 1 poison and an increased crit rate on herself. Like, okay. And then on Fire of Purgation, attacks 1 enemy, removes 1 random buff from the target, and has a 75% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 3 turns. And that's it, pretty much. 1 burn on a 5-turn cooldown, and then a poison debuff on a 5-turn cooldown. There was literally a time where I pulled a Sacred Shard and I was like, I really want a Juliana. Let me know in the comment section, did you ever have that feeling back in the day when Raid was kind of OG? She also has crit rate in arena battles by 20%. I do not even use her in the faction wars. Like, she's garbage. She's actually garbage. I never thought I'd see the day where I'd say it, but it's true. Like, power crept by a million champions since she came out. But looks pretty cool though. I wish they made like a legendary version of Juliana. Alright, so next up is going to be one of the first ever increased accuracy champions in the game. Can you guess who it is? And it's Pistillus. Now, I remember when I made a video on him, and it might actually be the only video on this champion. And I believe him and, is it Kurzad, the dwarf? Both of them came out at similar times, but Pistillus was like one of the first increased accuracy champions. And I just don't need him anymore because we got champions like Yoshi, the drunkard, in the game now. But attacks 1 enemy 2 times, has a chance of placing Leech. This is pretty strong, I guess, but it's on a low chance. And then attacks 1 enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 2 turns. Heals all allies by 15% of their max HP if the HP burn debuff is placed, and fills the turn meters of all allies by 15% if the HP burn debuff is not placed. Now, it's okay because it allows you to, do you want to use a HP burn? If not in the arena, and you just want a turn meter fill, you just build him with 0 accuracy and just get a 15% turn meter. But if you've got someone like a Deacon Armstrong, you don't need a skill like this, right? And then battle wielding places a 50% increased accuracy and a 15% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Now, if this is your only increased accuracy champion, your mid game, I still think he's a pretty solid choice. I think to make this champion be used a lot more often, Polarium if you're listening, is put the turn meter fill in this ability here. So in the arena, you get an increased accuracy, increased turn meter, and maybe even change it to an increased crit rate. Then you'll be looking at A tier epic champion for the arena, pretty much. But yeah, I just never find myself using him anymore. He looks great. I did have fun with him once upon a time, but since then he's just He's just not part of my teams anymore, pretty much. And next up on the list is going to be, where is she? Kunoichi from the Shadowkin faction. Now, I was really excited when this champion came out. Got a Wolverine on the hands like my logo, really cool mask, and looks great. Now, she has a weaken on the A1, which is really solid for the clan boss. Attacks all enemies and places a leech debuff on a 3-turn cooldown, or 4-turn cooldown, sorry. If it was on a 3-turn, it would be a lot more consistent. And then places an ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. And then fills this champion's turn meter by 50%. Now, this can be speed tuned, but it's very, very tricky. I'm just not a fan of the turn meter fill, personally. For places like the Faction Wars, it's an outstanding skill. As you guys know, in that Faction Wars, if you don't have a Torogi the Frog, it's really, really tough. So, that's probably one place I would use it if I needed it. But I don't even find myself using it in Faction Wars, to be honest. I did make a clan boss team which never got released because it was just really underwhelming and it was really hard to tune. But if you do want to see that video, I have got it in the vault somewhere. I can bring it out and showcase it one day. And places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever their HP drops below 50%. I think if I was to change this champion, I think I would take the turn meter fill out for the clan boss. This is just personal preference. And then very similar to how Sandlash Survivor is. You see how she's got like that passive where she puts the ally protection on all allies. I would like this to go on a block damage on all allies, even if it stays on a 5-turn cooldown. Because if you're placing that leech, that's really strong. If you're placing weaken, coinciding with a drop defense, a reliable ally protection for every team on a 3-turn cooldown, and then if everyone starts to get mitigated, slaps up that block damage so your champions can get their healing back through that leech. I think then should be great. For now, I'm not a fan, personally. But let me know if you disagree with any of these picks here. Next one's actually going to be a rare champion. I wouldn't usually put this on the list, but I recently 6-starred her. Kind of like a budget version of a Royal God, I'd say, for the Hydra boss. But it just doesn't perform at all. If you came into this game recently, she did get nerfed back in the day. But I think nowadays she needs to be buffed again. Like, what did I just say, buffed? No, she got nerfed back in the day. And now she needs to be buffed again. Because she's got a decreased accuracy A1, right? That's really solid. And then on the A2, attacks one enemy 2 times and there's a little heal on a critical hit. But the AoE scales off max HP and it is nowhere near the capabilities of a Cold Heart, a Royal Guard, or a Husk. It's just not there whatsoever. Yes, it is a rare champion, but look at Cold Heart, guys. She can smack, right? And I thought she'd be a great substitute for budget teams for normal Hydra, but it just doesn't perform. I don't know. Bring some love to Steel Boa Polarium. I would love to see it one day. Next up is going to be another epic champion. This is probably the most controversial one, but remember, I'm talking about myself personally. And it is, if I can find him, it's Gorgrap. Now, the only reason why I 6-starred this champion, I pulled him really, really late, right? I had Arbiter by then, and that's probably why I don't use him. And it was just for the Faction Wars, just to get the free stuff on my Lydia with the reviving. And that was it. I never used him again, not even in Faction Wars. But he is a really strong champion for 90% of accounts out there. Attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of removing a random buff. Fills the turn meters of all allies by 15%. And places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. Really, really strong. And then, on animate, revives any dead allies with 25% HP. And then heals all allies on a 5-turn cooldown. I don't need a 5-turn cooldown on my account. I've got a Duchess, I've got Arbiters. Well, technically just Arbiter's the only one why I don't use him. Fills the turn meters by 15%. I've got a Deacon Armstrong that can also decrease in the same skill and applies a drop defense. And a speed aura in only arena by 23%. I don't think I'll ever use him again, but he's a really strong champion in this game. I don't think he needs to get buffed or anything like that. He's just been power crept by many champions that I pulled recently. Next one's going to be a Doom Tower champion. Where is she? This champion was trash in my opinion. She magic? There she is, Gweneth. So she comes, I think, after Dark Kale. Correct me if I'm wrong. But she attacks all enemies on the A1, which makes her really solid for putting those stun sets on or something like that. And this attack will not trigger counterattacks, which is pretty solid for... I'm trying to think of a place that you can use this. Maybe the Nether Spider, not proccing those counterattacks. Get them under CC with a stun set. Could be a really strong option. Then attacks one enemy and before attacking has a 100% chance of placing a weakened debuff on the target for 2 turns. And heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. And then heals all allies with any surplus heal. The surplus heal is not what you guys think. It's just... Manaya has a very similar thing, I believe. But she does it on herself with just a normal heal. And it didn't blow me away whatsoever. And transfers all debuffs from this champion to one target enemy, then attacks the enemy. Will ignore 10% of the target's defense for each debuff they are under. Now you may be thinking, this has a lot of potential to smack somebody. But how often are you going to be able to place like 10 debuffs to get 100% ignore defense? It's just not going to happen, and you need to take so many turns for this champion to get those debuffs on herself. Maybe pairing it with a... What's his name? That orc. You guys know what I mean, where he puts the poison and stuff on himself. Maybe that's like one scenario, but probably the best part of her kit is the speed in all battles in Doom Tower. But for me, I did try my best. I put her in nuke builds, support builds, and she was just very underwhelming for me. I would actually rather use a Bellower than a Gweneth, so... And that's a rare champion, so if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does. And remember, the time that we get her in this game, she's like the 4th or 5th Doom Tower epic that you get from the normal Doom Tower. Next up is going to be a legendary champion. Probably come by no surprise here, and it's Noble. I believe he did get a buff, but still very underwhelming. So on the Smell Fear, attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by 1 turn. If the target is under a Fear or True Fear debuff, puts up to a 65% chance of decreasing the duration of all targets buffs by 1 turn. On Harbinger, attacks one enemy, will ignore 30% of the target's defense and fills this champion's turn meter by 25% after the attack. If the target is under a Fear or True Fear debuff, decreases the cooldown of Dismay skill by 1 turn. Now, if I was to change this champion in any way, and this ability still doesn't smack, like I've tried it, it's just not there for me, even with the ignoring of defense. But I'd maybe make him a... I'm trying to say this right here. Do you know how Lua does it, where she does a big hit on one ability, and then puts like a small hit on other enemies? I think that would make him pretty reliable, I guess. Being able to ignore that defense and maybe ignore 10% on all other enemies. And once again, that conditional fear stuff to reduce the cooldowns. And then Dismay attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance once booked of decreasing each enemy's turn meter by 50%. If there are any enemies under Fear or True Fear debuffs, will also fill this champion's turn meter by 5% of the amount those enemies lose. Whenever an enemy's turn meter is fully depleted by this champion, or any champion, has a 75% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on the enemy team, or on that enemy for 1 turn. I don't know. I just feel like he needs, if he's got all of this Fear and True Fear stuff in his kit, there needs to be a lot more consistent way, apart from a full depletion on a single ally. To make full use of his kit, there needs to be more Fear or True Fear in here. Maybe make this ability place that Fear and True Fear, right? Decrease all targets enemies and place a True Fear. Then we have got ourselves an amazing A3 champion, in my opinion. I think they just missed the mark. There's potential. He's just not there for me yet. Next up is going to be a Longbid. Where is he? And I did use him, I think, in my first ever Ultra Nightmare 3 or 4 key team. I just feel like people like Farrakhan the Fat does the ally attack a lot more better than him. So attacks one enemy with 4 random allies and increases the damage inflicted by 20%. No debuffs involved, nothing like that, or no buffs at all, and is on a 4-turn cooldown. He does have a weaken, and this ability does hit really hard, and that's on a 2-turn. So that's something I do like about his kit personally. And that maybe with a Farrakhan effect, he places that drop defense, you will then have that synergy of both debuffs and double ally attack. We'll ignore shield and block damage buffs on his A1. I just feel like he's just a bit underwhelming nowadays. Like if you consider all of the ally attack champions in this game, there's just people that do it better than him. Not to say he's trash, I still think he's outstanding. He's just not for me anymore, and I can't remember the last time I used him. Like, look at his gear. Like, I don't use him, right? Next up is going to be one of the fusion champions, and that is Karato Fox Hunter. Many of you guys might be screaming at me, this guy can snipe a Duchess, he can do this, he can do that. I just don't care about him, like, at all. So on his A1, attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 25% chance of placing a weakened debuff. Okay. Then attacks one enemy, places a stun debuff for 2 turns, grants an extra turn and resets the cooldown of this skill if a void legendary is on the same team. 90% of people will not have a Yumeko to pair this with, so straight away you're mitigating 50% of his full capabilities. Suppression Ward attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a block active skills debuff for 2 turns. This debuff cannot be resisted if Yumeko's on the same team. Now, if I had a Yumeko, I probably wouldn't put him on my list. But because I don't have one, I feel like I've used this champion and he's just very underwhelming, right? I want this guy to deal damage, and if I'm dealing damage, I don't get the full block active skills because it's hard to get accuracy on your nukers. Damage inflicted by this champion cannot be decreased by enemy passive skills or masteries, except by the passive skills of bosses. Damage inflicted by damage inflicted by this champion cannot be increased by either this champion's masteries or ally passive skills, except when attacking bosses. Whenever Yumeko dies, instantly grants a turn to this champion and resets the cooldown of this champion's skills. If I had Yumeko, I think he's great. If you don't have Yumeko, I'm never going to use him personally. Let me know if you're in the same boat on this dude. I was really excited for him. I really struggled on his fusion as well. He's just not for me at the moment, right? Next up is going to be Lugi the Steadfast. I didn't want to say this, and he's decently solid, but I just don't remember the last time that I used him, so I do regret 6-starring him. And attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 25% of the damage inflicted, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of their max HP for 2 turns. Really solid ability for the Scarab King, but I've got an Uros now, so I don't really need it. On Bodyguard, places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 3 turns, and places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns. If this ability for me was increased defense and ally protection, AoE on the increased defense, I think this would be an outstanding champion for the clan boss. As it stands, because the increased defense is on himself, it means you need to bring it in from other places, right? Attacks all enemies, 100% chance of placing a block active skills for 2 turns. You see, if I was to use him anywhere, it'd be in the faction wars. I don't find myself using him anymore, but I definitely did use him in the past. 4-turn cooldown on the block active skills, ally protection to keep you topped up, and a shield on the A1. He's a solid champion, I do highly recommend him, but he's just not for me anymore. And as you see, I did have him in a destroy set when I used to use him for Scarab. I just don't need him anymore. Like, he's been power crept for many champions on my account. Who else was there? So we had all of these. So I think that was all of them. That was my 10 champions. Sorry if I rambled on a bit long today. Let me know the 10 champions or 1 champion that you guys don't use anymore or find very underwhelming. And if you disagree, of course, let me know. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. I think this video will go live today. And keep an eye out for the channel, guys. This week is going to be bombarded with content. Literally, my throat is hurting right now. I've recorded probably 4 videos before this one. I just wanted to get something out before those videos go live. Catch you guys in the next one, and peace.